You are welcome to the Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa podcast, episode 001. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa. I am Nenelwa Tomi, and I'm your host for this show, the Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa. I'm a Tanzanian American, and as I continue to reflect on and process how I've embodied the role of the American African, I started to reflect on why I decided to be a part of this show. So part of the reason that the producer Toya and I have been able to collaborate on this work is because the topic is near and dear to my heart. I'm a product of the immigrant experience, having settled in Western Massachusetts about 20 years or so ago when my parents arrived in search of the American dream. Embracing my Tanzanianship was not as difficult because accents, chapatis, and Bollywood were my normal. For me, the hardest part was acknowledging the other half of me that identified and fit the part of American. Having to prove myself constantly took a toll until I decided not to give the naysayers power. What does it truly mean to look African, to look American? Why did I have to choose in the first place? The Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa is a weekly podcast about the African immigrants' experience in the United States. We'll be hearing great stories from immigrants of different nationalities, genders, marital status, professions, and experiences. Stories of strength, stories that inspire, stories that show us what obstacles to avoid and how our guests have avoided or overcome them. These are ordinary men and women with extraordinary stories. Let's begin. Our guest on the show today is Vienna Mbagaya. She is Kenyan and has lived in the U.S. for a number of years. Vienna is currently working as an entrepreneur and lives in Washington, D.C. Like many African immigrants, Vienna came to the United States to find greener pastures, but discovered that the road wasn't as easy as advertised. Vienna, welcome to the Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So Vienna, we're going to start with talking a bit about your background. So can you tell us where home is for you?
Home is Kenya, specifically Nairobi and Western Province.
Okay, excellent. Can you expand a little bit about that? Give us a visual. What does it look like? What was a typical kind of day for you? Kind of expand on that for us.
So when I was growing up, my experience, my whole childhood takes place in Nairobi, except I went to boarding school starting at 9 years old. So I was back and forth between Nairobi and Western Kenya, which is very rural, where my family is from. Both my parents are from there. Okay. We're from the Luya tribe. And in my dad's town, it's called Mumias. We are the producers, one of the top producers of sugar. So there's a lot of sugarcane farming. Mm-hmm. So whenever we went to see our grandparents, would OD on sugar because, you as you're walking, it's right next to you, just plus, a miwa, which is a sugar cane, and you keep eating as you go. It's so green, a lot of vegetation, very peaceful. So I love that it reminds me of our people. Whenever I go back home, whenever I would go back to the village, I would always see women who look like me now. So as a kid, I knew that if I were to become a woman, if I was blessed to grow up to become a woman, I would look like these women. And so I identify closely with just not the place itself, the geography, but also the people and what they look like. And then Nairobi, on the other hand, is the stark opposite, where it's a lot of noise, very city-like, a lot of traffic, a lot of interesting characters, and the two mixture of both kind of brings me to where I am now, where I live in Washington, D.C. And even though I love the city, I always find myself in Alexandria, Virginia, or in McLean, places where it's more quiet. And I still get to maintain that balance that I had as a kid in Kenya.
That's excellent. So can you talk about what brought you to the United States?
Yeah, so growing up, I had a mom who was really interesting. She was unlike any other moms I knew, from how she dressed, how she wore her hair, how she handled the household as a wife, as a businesswoman. She was the only woman I knew who was traveling internationally for work. And at that time, my mom was maybe in her late 20s. So I used to be envious of her. I'm like, wow, every time my mom walks down the street, everybody stops and stares. The children, the other moms. I used to be like, my mom is the bomb.
That's swag.
You know, she was into stocks. She's just talking about things I knew nothing about. I'm just like, wow. So I had an image of motherhood from that perspective. Like, when you become a mom, you become all these amazing things. And part of her business brought her to the U.S. And like most immigrants, when she got here, she realized that the life that she had for her kids in Kenya would be much different if she stayed and worked hard and brought us over. And that's exactly what she did. So she was here for 4 years, working so hard, making that sacrifice that, you know, a lot of parents will make to become a provider that you want to be. And so she came here and was here for 4 years. 4 years later, we came. We landed in Jersey. And yeah, that's where my story begins in America.
Wow. Jersey, of all places. Okay. So can you talk a bit about just memories you've had on your initial impressions of the United States when you arrived? Did it live up to the expectations that you heard about, read about, saw on TV?
Well, not really. You know, it's funny because I always say America has done a great job of marketing itself as a place where the streets are paved with gold and opportunities are abundant for everyone. And there's an equal shot for that opportunity for the American dream. So when I landed in New Jersey, it was January 12th of 1998. It was freezing, and that was the first shock. I was like, what is this? It was snowing. And then when we got to Jersey, we were staying in an apartment building where the people were, you know, different from us. We're the only Africans or people of color in that building. And I remember one neighbor one time just gave us a look. And I thought to myself, why would somebody look at us that way? But it was so slight, but I didn't catch it. And then there was a time my mom took us to the doctors to get all our shots and everything before we go to school. And I remember them skipping over in the waiting room and not seeing us when it was our turn. And I remember my mom being so mad and grabbing us and just getting us back, you know, back in the car. She was like, we're going to go somewhere else. There was little things that there's no way I would have known had I not been in the U.S. And I used to think the U.S. was like Full House and, you know, Fresh Prince.
Full House and Fresh Prince. If only America was like Full House and Fresh Prince.
I did. I was like, all white families are like Full House and they all get along. And there's a nice theme song. And then Fresh Prince, black people are just like that, you know? Dr. Phil.
Living large.
I mean, Uncle Phil was real to me. It was like, oh, but in Kenya, I grew up with judges and doctors and all these people of prestige who looked like me. So Fresh Prince was like, oh, yeah, it's plausible, of course. So we were surprised.
That's excellent. So how has that impression changed over time now that you've been here for a couple of years? What are your thoughts on that? Has it changed at all? Or is it still that same kind of nuanced feeling you had when you got here?
You know, I think I've been in the U.S. half my life. No, more than half my life. So, of course, a lot of my perspectives have changed because I have changed. I came in as a 14-year-old, and now I'm in my very early 30s. Very early.
Very, very early. Let's make that clear.
Should I repeat that? Anyway, my birthday is June 25th, so I'm still in my very early 30s. That's not the point, though. The point is, I was in the U.S. for such a long time, and so much has happened since 1998, politically, socially, culturally, and I've been part of that wave. So, however, the frustrations, whatever the frustrations are for African Americans in this country now, today, in this moment, I identify with. I may not identify with some of it for historical purposes, I mean, I came in very late. I came in 98, and the civil rights movement was in the 60s. So I may not have experienced that gap there, but I definitely experienced the pain that African Americans experience in the U.S. by virtue of having my skin color.
Wow. So can you talk about just some of the difficulties and the challenges you faced assimilating into American culture? Because that usually is one of the biggest barriers, is transitioning in and being accepted for that.
Yeah, I think assimilation is a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge whether you were born here and you're going from middle school to high school, or, coming to a new job. Any new experience is difficult. For me, coming in as a teenager made it way worse. Because I went to boarding school in Kenya where boys and girls are separated. And even though you're learning about yourself, there's no way you can apply it because there is no opposite gender for you to say, oh, that's what they mean when they say this and that.
Right.
So it took me a very long time to assimilate with regards to culture and fitting in with my peers. And when it comes to education, that's the one thing that I felt as though was a level playing field. It wasn't at first because I had an accent and they put me in special ed, but because my work spoke for itself, I was able to go into honors and AP classes. By the time I was graduating, I was doing great. So education for me became the pillar that kind of supported and guided my success in the U.S.
Wow. So how did you find ways to overcome these challenges? It sounds like there were a number of different things you were facing, especially being so young and kind of getting into adolescence. So how did you find ways to overcome that? What were your solace? Besides, of course, education being at the pinnacle of that, what were other mechanisms you used to move forward and to persevere?
Well, I didn't have a lot of friends, but the few that I did have were amazing. And these were people that I just kind of latched onto. There were two sisters who lived across the street from me, and they were Jamaican. And so they were the only Black girls in school for a long time before I showed up. So we became super close. And they were the ones that were telling me, junior year, you're supposed to do everything so that by the time you get to senior year and you're applying for college, all the colleges know about what you've done. Don't wait till senior year to start doing those things. Or they would tell me, you need to volunteer for you to have a strong application. Or they would tell me about boys and, tell me about fashion and, what they were watching on TV and what the cool kids were doing. So I was insulated by strong friendships that helped me navigate my teenage years and also into college. So definitely having a support system was key. And also had great teachers and mentors. That's something that I've continued now, where I have people that the moment I realize these are people who are going to be impactful in my life, and by virtue of them being smarter or older or more experienced, I have to listen and I have to make sure I keep them close.
Right.
So that helps as well. And the last thing was just understanding the African American culture. That's something I think, I don't think it's a priority for a lot of immigrants. A lot of times we latch onto the culture by watching TV or by, making sure we know everything about the culture on the social level. So we don't really look at the historical component of being a person of color or being new in this country. For me, I was attracted to literature, so I read up on a lot of African American literature, including Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, all these amazing writers. I just absorbed everything because I figured that if I understood the African American history, I would also be able to better understand my future in this country.
Definitely. Would you say that you fully assimilated into this American experience that you're living, or would you say that there are still some things you're still navigating even now in your adulthood?
I think part of being a human being is just always exploring and always growing and always figuring out who you are. I think I have never really felt as though I'm home in the U.S. And that's a feeling that I didn't realize I felt until I went back home back in 2007. And nobody was looking twice at me. Nobody cared.
Right.
We all look alike. And I realized, oh my gosh, when I'm in the U.S., when I walk into a store, I'm aware of myself and what I'm doing. My situational awareness is very different in the U.S. than it is in Kenya.
Right.
I feel safer in some components. I feel more welcome. I feel more entitled. So, I don't know. I feel like I don't think there's ever a place where I'm going to feel like I'm fully assimilated. I think I'm just always going to be in a place where I am balancing both cultures that I truly identify with.
Right. That always tends to be the struggle or the challenge. So we know that in the African community, our families and traditions play a huge role in the decisions that we make. Sometimes our family members don't necessarily understand that what we're going through while we're trying to integrate into this new environment. So what role, if any, did your family play in helping or hindering you as you work to establish yourself in the United States?
You know, I used to think that it's a very direct relationship where your parents or your family says this and you do it. And if you don't, hell's going to break loose. What happened for me is I was given a path. You know, I was brought to America by a struggling mom, you know, raising 4 teenagers. So my job was to make her life as easy as possible by working hard and being a good student, being a good person, you know, finding a job and getting out of the way. That's what I thought. But when I got to college, at Boston College as an undergrad, I realized, you know what, I'm not really going to be a doctor as everyone expected. I'm going to figure out what it is I want to do. And I don't know what assumption, I don't know who I thought I was. I just did it. I did it. I applied to come to GW for grad school right after undergrad. Because I figured, listen, if I change my mind about going to med school, I'm not going back home. To face somebody.
That's real.
I didn't want to hear it. So I decided to do it. And what I'm realizing now is you can't just tell your parents what you want to be. You have to show them. You have to actually put in the work, because our parents they have high expectations of themselves, let alone of us as their children, who have been given this opportunity that they did not have. So there's a lot of pressure, but I always encourage the younger women that I mentor to hustle on your own. Make sure you have something that when you bring to them, whether they like it or not, they'll know that this is something you have put in as a priority, and you have made it your passion and you made it your focus. Don't just talk about it like, I'm thinking maybe I want to do further. No, just do it and show them later.
Definitely. So kind of transitioning to now, how have you been able to narrow down the jobs or the employment opportunities that you've been able to have now? And was that a difficult process after graduate school, kind of navigating the work sphere?
I don't think it was hard. I think I made it hard, or I made it the way it is. Some people just have the personality where they can go to one job and they can sit there every day and do the same thing and they're happy. And they can be in their job for years, if not decades. And so we're coming into this millennial demographic. We're coming upon them in the workforce where they're coming in saying, we want flexibility more than a raise, more than security by being in one place for a long time. I just want to be able to do different things. So you'll see a lot of companies that attract millennials will say, instead of you coming in and doing one job, we're going to rotate you. And the average time that they stick in one job is 2 to 3 years. So the companies make the most out of their desires and structure the company accordingly. So for me, I learned that the hard way, though. I went into different types of positions, different types of jobs, and some of them were toxic, and some of them were not good for me. Some of them were amazing. Some of them were soul teaching. But I found myself in a place where I realized I've had so many different opportunities and so many different challenges. How can I step the next level? And that became entrepreneurship and consultancy. So I whatever companies are doing to attract millennials, I do for myself. I wanted to go into PR and marketing, but I realized, the best way to go about it is to go into an industry that's not oversaturated, and that's technology. A lot of tech people are not really into the left-brain creative, side of things. So if an engineer or a tech person has an idea, they want to know how to sell it. You come in and you provide that service. So that became one thing that became, really interested in technology, PR, and marketing. I wanted to see the world through my work. And so public health consulting and research is amazing because like now I get to go to Kenya and work in Kenya.
Right.
So basically I had to go through the traditional route and figure out what worked for me, what didn't, and then create an environment that suits me and my personality.
I love that. And I think that's great advice for our audience to sometimes that we have to just create what it is that we want to do or see in the world, and we can't wait for it to happen or to be kind of laid down for us. So knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to the younger you that immigrated here a couple of years ago?
To be honest, I wouldn't listen to myself. Just when I was a teenager, I would not want to hear from this old lady trying to tell me about my life. But I would say to fellow young immigrants, who are sitting in the cafeteria on their own, who are afraid to make friends because of their accent, they're ashamed that they can't do the other things that peers do or are allowed to do. I would advise that you just stick it out, to be honest, because those are the experiences that are going to shape who you really are. I look back and had it not been for some painful experiences or some learning curves, I would not be the person that I am today. So it's cliche to say this, but as long as you are surrounding yourself with positive people, as long as you are always redefining your goals, always making sure that everyone that is around you knows everything that you're about, you'll be fine. And I say this because I don't think I know anyone I've met who doesn't know that I'm from Kenya.
Right.
And for that reason, I've bumped into a lot of opportunities. So every time I meet someone, yes, it's about sharing information and listening and all that good stuff, but it's also about being very clear about who you are, where you're going, and how you want to get there.
That's fantastic.
It's very little, I know it's very nuanced, but it matters.
It definitely
matters. When people walk away, you want them to remember you in some way.
For sure. So right now we want to give you an opportunity to talk about a project that you might be working on right now that you'd like our audience members to know about.
Okay, well, I'll be in Kenya for the next few months. When I'm there, I hope to continue working on The Invisible Neighbors.
Okay. So
theinvisibleneighbors.com is a website where I collect stories of immigrants and first-generation Americans. It's something I do on the side while I'm consulting with others.
In the midst of everything else?
Yes, I have like 9 jobs, but still. The Invisible Neighbors is going to be it's going to be a great platform in Kenya as well, because I'm going to be looking for immigrants and first-generation Kenyans and having them tell their stories, what it's like to move from elsewhere to Kenya. I want to use my social media platform, be it The Invisible Neighbors or Vienna Mbagaya on Instagram or Twitter. I want to be able to use that platform to share what I see when I go back home now. A lot of people that I've told I'm going to Kenya are like, do you have internet there? How are you going to stay in touch? Do you have electricity?
Yeah. Are you sleeping with lions?
I know. Are you going to be hunting? So I want to use this next few months to be a platform for documenting the real Nairobi, my Nairobi that I know, and the Kenya that I know.
I love that.
And it's an amazing experience because I know it's not mine alone. There's a lot of people, especially undocumented immigrants in the U.S. who cannot go home. They cannot travel and see their people and see, taste the foods they've missed and be part of an experience that they grew up with. And so I don't take this as just a regular journey, a trip. I take this as an honor to be able to go back home and to honor my people and to connect again.
That's wonderful. So how can our audience members reach you to get more information about the Invisible Neighbors Project or Vienna Nairobi and the work that you're doing?
Okay, so my website is theinvisibleneighbors.com.
Excellent.
And my social media handle for everything is Vienna Nairobi.
Excellent. And I can't let you get off the hook without you telling us how you met President Obama. We saw a photo of you on various social media sites, and so we wanted to learn more about that experience.
That old thing.
That old thing. No big deal.
Michelle was texting me to come over.
Oh my gosh, Michelle. She's so crazy.
No, one of my clients actually came from the West Coast, and he was telling me, have you ever met the president? All these things. I was like, no, I have a feeling you're about to help me meet the president. And that's what I tell people about. When you meet people, speak your intentions. Speak your intentions at all times and be truthful about them. It wasn't me being greedy. It wasn't me taking advantage. It wasn't me expressing what I wanted. Don't be afraid to do so.
Speak your intention. That's it.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, I would love to meet the president. And sure enough, a week later, and I have to mention that around the time I met Barack Obama, the president of the U.S., I was in a really bad place personally and professionally. I was at my lowest. I was at rock bottom. Yet in my rock bottomness, I would find all these different glimpses of inspiration and opportunity. And I would be like, oh my God, how is this so? I'm in the darkness here and I'm still moving. I'm still hustling. I'm still networking. I'm still worthy. It was, for me, every time I look at that picture, I know exactly where I was financially, where I was emotionally, where I was psychologically. I was not in a good place. Wow. So what that taught me was that regardless of where you are, keep the people around you positive. If you are around people who are not positive, you will not see any light. You will stay in that darkness and you will not be inspired at all. For me, when I was going through my tough time, I kept people that inspired me around. I wasn't jealous of them. I wasn't afraid of them. I didn't distance myself from greatness. I latched onto that even more. And out of that, just the one picture and that moment, I came out of a month later, I was back to where I needed to be. So it was an amazing experience, a very teaching for me on a personal level.
It sounds like it. Thank you for sharing that. Those are wonderful. That was a wonderful experience that you shared and wonderful words as well. Well, Vienna, thank you so much for coming on my show. This has really been inspiring, invigorating, reaffirming. I wish you the very best in your next steps, especially in this future trip to Kenya. I know you're going to conquer it, and we look forward to hearing what your next steps are when you return back to the United States.
Thank you, Nenelwa. I hope I come back and fill you in whenever I come back.
For sure. We would love that. We would love that.
What an inspiring story from our guest today. Hello, my name is Adetoye Oremosu, and I'm the author of the book, The Immigrant's Guide to Settling in America. To provide even greater value with this podcast, I'm offering a 40% discount to all listeners of The Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa who want to get a hard copy of my book. To take advantage of this offer, go to the Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa page on Facebook to like our page and also get your discount code there while the offer lasts. I've learned a lot in my time in the US, and I've also suffered a lot, sometimes unnecessarily, because I did not have the right information in time. I don't want you to go through the same experiences. There are many opportunities that immigrants don't know exist, so they don't even know to ask for them. My book shows you many of these opportunities in areas of finding work, housing and accommodation, feeding, and understanding the US credit system. I'm also offering a 7-day 40% discount on the ebook version of the same book, The Immigrant's Guide to Settling in America, which is also available on Amazon. This offer expires on Saturday, July 11th. Both promos are available on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. Happy 4th of July.
It has been really great having Vienna Mbagaya on the show. If there's a guest you'd like us to interview or any questions you want asked on future shows, or you just want to say hello and leave an encouraging word, please post them on the Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa page on Facebook. That is our show for today. Special thanks to the creator and producer of this show, Adetoye Oremosu. The Immigrant Experience with Nenelwa is a weekly podcast, and I look forward to bringing you a brand new story with an inspiring and thrilling guest next week. Until then, keep winning.